What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of See It Like Strev. We have a very, very special guest today. This is honestly a very full circle moment for me, and he's a busy man, so I appreciate him giving us some of his time. He is a legendary New Jersey high school football quarterback, the former director of player personnel for the New York Jets. He was with the Jets for 16 years. He's now the president of Accelerate Sports Ventures. He's not only a football guy, but he's a genuine dude who cares about people and has some awesome insights. Greg Nejmeh, thanks for joining me, man.
Strev, appreciate you having me, man. Listen, I've not had an intro that strong ever, so I appreciate that.
You know what, man? I love gassing up the people. You know what the energy I'm coming with, man.
I love it. You always do.
Well, like I said, man, this is so full circle for me. We've been going back and forth for a couple months, been really looking forward to this conversation, and I want to take us back to New York, all right, 2022. I signed with the Jets the day before camp. I end up sticking around as a camp arm, end up, making the team. And I just want to start off by saying thank you for that opportunity, man. That changed my life, and I know it was kind of a late addition. I know you were part of that, so just want to start off by saying thank you for that.
Of course, man. Listen, you earned it. I remember watching your Cardinals tape and just seeing the plays you made in some of those opportunities, and kind of knew the type of guy we wanted to add to that room. That's always really important, in that room. And I remember calling your agent, and then I think like maybe a day or two later, you and I connected. And I remember that first conversation. If I remember correctly, I think was it Miami was maybe the other team that was interested at the time?
I was with Miami prior to coming to you guys.
Right, that's right. Yeah. And there was another team that was kind of in the mix, and we just talked about what the opportunity was like, and it was awesome, man, honestly, and you made the most of it for sure.
Well, no, I appreciate that. And, you talk about the type of people that you want in your building. And I remember that being one of our conversations at the end of you kind of sharing that with me of, hey, we didn't really need a guy, but we were looking for a camp guy, and we heard you were a good dude in the locker room, so we ended up giving you opportunities. And I think that that's probably something that was valuable for you in your career, grinding your way up in the league. Like I said, you spent 16 years with the Jets. I hope I got that right. But, that's a grind. That's a grind to climb that ladder. What was that journey like for you? And how did you ultimately get to director of player personnel?
Yeah, I started just as a training camp intern, honestly. It was supposed to be just like a 6-week internship. People joke around, I just wouldn't leave the building, really. I ended up getting extended through that year, and then through free agency that first year. And then the second year, I was an intern again, but I wasn't really in the office. I was a remote worker before, people really figured out what that was. But I had great mentors there at the time that gave me the opportunity, that, advocated for me. And then I got hired full-time right after the lockout. And then, I stayed there. I was on the pro side. There was, I think, 4 different GMs and 5 head coaches during my time there, I believe. And, each time was able to kind of stick around, and then, eventually got an opportunity to take on more responsibility. And, honestly, I just always approach it like I'm going to be myself, and I'm going to, hope that people recognize that. I'm not going to try to act any differently, really, and, be ready when I got more opportunities and when my time came. I'm extremely grateful, and I have a ton of gratitude to the organization for, the responsibilities that I did have. I grew up a lifelong Jets fan, so like for me and for my family, it was awesome. Obviously we all wish we won more games, but, to have the responsibility and be tasked with that, it was the opportunity of a lifetime.
Yeah. I get so many people that hit me up being like, I want to get in sports. I want to work in sports. And I think nowadays, some people aren't willing to necessarily cut their teeth the hard way. And you going in as an unpaid intern, just sticking around the building, I think that says a lot about your character and taking advantage of the opportunities you were given and making great decisions along the way. And I feel like in that world of player personnel and making roster decisions, sometimes things work out and sometimes things don't work out. And I imagine you made some good moves or were part of bringing in some players that were successful. Was there ever a guy that you kind of had to stick your neck out for to get in the building that ended up working out, and maybe that ended up accelerating your career in the front office a little bit?
I don't know if there was like one specific instance, because, honestly, in the NFL, like it's a group effort, right? Obviously, you're going to have differing opinions, right, from other people. I always wanted my opinion to be heard, and felt like I think that's important, right, when you get to guiding decisions and to the decision maker level. So I always wanted people to know where I stood on things. But there's so many layers to making those. I would say the ones that, like, honestly, I take the most pride in are like opportunities like yours, or like I think of Mike White, right? We brought Mike in for a workout. Mike ended up extending his career and playing great ball for us. I think of guys like, Braxton Berrios and John Franklin Myers, Quincy Williams even, guys that got cut from other teams, right? That we as a staff identified, the traits and the fits and the things that we wanted, and look what it ended up doing for each one of their careers. Like Quincy and Braxton went on to be all pros at their position, after getting cut. And John Franklin Myers has gotten now, I think, 3 contracts, and is a excellent defensive lineman. So, I take a ton of pride in those, really. And those are the ones I kind of point to that I think just me and the group as a whole, I take the most satisfaction out of.
We had a lot of talent on that 2022 team. I mean, you look
Yeah.
at that roster top to bottom. I mean, you've got guys that have gone on to other teams, like you said, JFM, Quincy, all these guys who have gotten second and third contracts and had a ton of success. I mean, you guys did a great job building an awesome roster with that team. I think people forget just how talented that 22 team was.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of talent. And honestly, one of the things that we had, like our personnel staff and Coach Salah's staff had, is we had great communication. Like we were all on the same page. It led to a lot of, like, especially on the defensive side of the ball, a lot of really good acquisitions. And I think we all felt like we were kind of on the cusp of turning it. And unfortunately, obviously things happen, they're out of your control, and it didn't all come together. And there was certainly a lot of talent that we acquired. There was mistakes that we made too, which, I think we all take ownership of, and that's just kind of the name of the game, really.
Yeah, that's football. That's life in general, man. Learning
right.
from the positives, learning from the negatives, and just taking it, moving forward, and getting better.
That's it.
Looking around the league right now, training camps are underway, and I don't think a lot of people quite understand the grueling process of training camp, both from a player standpoint and a front office standpoint. You got 90 guys, you're cutting it down to 53. I've seen it from the side of a player, and you hear a lot of perspectives from the players that have been through it and end up making it or getting cut. But as a guy in the front office, I've got to imagine that cut down day and that period is also very difficult from your standpoint as well. Like, got to be one of the hardest days of the year for you guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of prep work that leads up to it, obviously. Like each preseason game, the pro scouts and everybody involved in roster decisions is evaluating these players, like every snap they get. And a lot of times you don't have a ton to go off of. It's 15 snaps maybe. And then you have to compare them to your own roster. So you have to be really like in tune with not just the game that you're playing, but also what you see in practice every day. And, we met weekly. We would meet with the coaches to all be on the same page. At the end of the day, like the rosters get cut from 90 to 53, right? And maybe that leads to 1 or 2 acquisitions. But if they're good ones, like some of the ones we mentioned before, it can make a huge impact on your team. So there's a lot of satisfaction that comes with that process, just kind of culminating and the work that gets put into it. The crazy thing is it coincides with having to cut all those same players from your own team, right? And guys that you have relationships with, and you may not agree with every decision, right? So like you're trying to be as prepared as you can. But at the same time, you realize that like that preparation may cost someone else on the roster, a roster spot. So it's kind of fleeting, to be honest with you. Those things work parallel paths from a timing standpoint, and it's not easy. I always joked that like after final cuts, whoever we claimed or signed came in, that was when you finally could let your hair down and you take like one breath. But then you go right into game week. So it doesn't last all that long,
Yeah, the turnaround is crazy. And as a guy who's grinding to make the team, it's like, all right, yeah, I made the team. And it's like, all right, day one, let's get into it. It happens quick, man. And the next thing you know, you blink and you're in week 6 and the season just keeps rolling.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned in the intro, you're working with Accelerate Sports Ventures and all that experience you have with the Jets. I mean, I got to imagine you're bringing a ton of value into what they're doing, using your knowledge to help college teams in this current world of NIL and that landscape. So for me and for everyone listening, what exactly are you doing for schools, and how has that experience in the front office of NFL organizations helped you bring value to college programs?
Well, number one, it's helped me immensely. When I left the Jets, I had some other opportunities, and, I wanted to be really thoughtful about kind of what the next step would be. And I kept coming back to like where the college football landscape's going, with NIL and all that sort of stuff. And I just realized that there's now this parallel skill set, the 16 years I had with the Jets and helping with all these decisions, these are the same things that college programs are kind of tasked with. It's not too complicated, but it is very unique. And I don't know that anyone quite does it like we do it at Accelerate, but it's true film-based evaluation, right? All the ways that I evaluated players in the NFL and that our staff evaluated players, it's just an add-on service to their existing process, right? It helps these programs with additional bandwidth to try to identify more players. It helps evaluate, at a deeper level. They get stretched so thin with all the other stuff that they have going on. It's the only thing I'm focused on. So I'm able to watch like guys throughout the entire course of the year, not just a couple clips of a game here and there, right? And then the cool thing that we're able to do is we're able to tie it to, actual like values, right? And help these teams not just evaluate, but also understand like how you allocate resources, how you understand cost replacement analysis. And it's made a huge impact for the teams that we're working with already. I'm really excited about that. Like at the end of the day, Strev, but my big thing is I want the teams to feel an impact from it. We're at multiple schools, but I don't care if we're at 3 or if we're at 10, I want them all to feel the impact from it. I think that's where we're different than a scouting service, so to speak. It's a lot more customized. And so it's been awesome. And I'm loving the networking that comes with it. And I'm loving just seeing the impact that it makes and the challenge of growing, this business really.
Yeah, you talk about the networking aspect, and one thing about football is, as you know, it is just such a small, interconnected world. So you go out, you help a couple programs, you help a couple people, word starts to travel really fast about the value that you're bringing to schools. And I think you touched on it. One area that I've got to imagine is immense value is understanding the aspect of a salary cap that colleges haven't really ever had to deal with. And now in the landscape of NIL, it feels like it's kind of moving towards a salary cap in terms of the money that can be allocated and putting values on different players. I'm assuming that the colleges don't have a ton of experience doing that, and you bringing that to them has got to help put a percentage value and a numerical value on some of these players on their roster and how they can allocate some of the resources that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing about it is like mine is fully objective, right? So like I don't have, what a guy got paid last year or, what star recruit he was and that sort of stuff. Like there's no influence. It's just my raw evaluation, right? So like I tell the schools all the time, like it in a lot of cases, it either validates or confirms maybe what you think. But in certain cases, it should also challenge it, and I think the schools that kind of, and honestly, the ones I work with are real, like these guys are pros, so they're able to understand where I'm coming from and what I'm saying and how to apply it to their own roster, right? And so from that standpoint, I think it provides a ton of value. And I know that they kind of see it all that way already. And then the other aspect is really just like, they don't have to sort through, 2,000 evals, right? It is like customized and specialized for them. I take, their thoughts on their roster, my thoughts, some of the traits and those sorts of things, and just get a little bit of a roadmap to make sure that I'm identifying players and I'm valuing players that are actually attainable for each school, and potential targets, not just every single person. Because I think in that way, you kind of get paralysis by analysis. And that's what I don't want to have happen. This service is built to help you now and also plan for the future in providing clarity and speed in decisions at the end of the day.
That makes a ton of sense. We're talking about things kind of on the front office of the university standpoint, but jumping over to like the athlete side of things, because you're more on the front office, but being able to see it from the athlete side of things. How would you advise college athletes in this NIL world? I know that's such a broad question, but you hear all these conversations about, do you go and chase the money, or do you go for a big school? Are you trying to get on the field? And I look at NIL agents now and I'm like, man, anybody can just be an NIL agent. What kind of actual advice are some of these kids getting? I guess just very broadly, how would you advise the athletes in this world of NIL? Do you go to the biggest school? Do you go for the most money? Do you go where you can play? Your advice from where you're sitting.
I think this is something that you can attest to, right? Everyone's situation is different. Like what's best for you or for me is not going to be best for, a quarterback that you're training, for example, right? So I think it's really understanding the player, understanding what's important to them, understanding the family, and then also understanding like from a true football standpoint, like having someone that can help guide you, with some of those decisions. How do you fit in the roster? How do you fit in the scheme? What is the situation with the coach or the coaching staff there? I think a lot of times people, they see the money and look, trust me, I get it. We all want to make money, right? But the most money doesn't always mean the best decision. And I always feel like the best decisions are the ones where you're going to have long-term sustainability and long-term opportunity to continue to grow and develop as a player. That's how I would approach it. And I have conversations with people about this, to just to help them really more than anything. I always try to learn those things about them first and then kind of help guide them really more than anything. Because I think there's so much confusion, from a compliance standpoint, from a rule standpoint. And there's agents, and look, some of them, and I know a lot of them, they're really good people. They do a really good job. But then there's an element that is not that, right? And I think that's another way to advise too, is like, let's make sure we pick the right agent and the right representative for us as a family, because those people should not just be getting deals for you. They should be advising you on your career choices, and if you think about it like that, there'll be a lot more, calmness and clarity in the decisions that each family has to make.
Yeah. I always tell kids that. I'm like, invest in the relationships with the people that you feel have your best interests in mind, because there's a lot of people out there that are just trying to say, hey, go get the most money. Let me get my NIL cut and go from there. But to me, and I think you view things the same way, this is a game of relationships and putting yourself in a position where people are invested in you and value what you bring to a program. So I completely agree, man. I tell the quarterbacks that I coach the exact same thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure from the end too, like, it's rewarding to help them with that, because you see, how guys can get steered in the wrong direction or have the wrong, advice. And it's not to say I'm always going to be right or you're always going to be right with the athletes you talk about, but it's really rewarding when like people are appreciative of the work that you did. They see it and they value it, and it's helped them and their family, because some of these kids have really cool, unique opportunities, that you and I never had when we were coming up, right? And they have it at such a younger age, and the families need to be ready for it. So it's really rewarding just from a relationship standpoint to be able to have some of those conversations.
100%, man. Helping a kid go get a Division I scholarship and just being a small part of their process is like, it's almost more rewarding than me getting a scholarship, just because it's like, man, I'm helping you accomplish your goal. And I remember what that meant to me. So to be a small part of these kids' process and help them. And that's why, you mentioned it earlier, just advising kids just simply to help them. Yep. There's nothing more gratifying than helping a kid go reach their goals.
No doubt. No doubt.
Here's a kind of a more specific question, because like I said, I coach quarterbacks out here in Arizona. As you know, I know you're involved with coaching quarterbacks and some of that stuff out in New Jersey. So I'm sure you get some of these questions, but there's two buckets, right? There's the kid that is a 4-5-star recruit that has a bunch of Power 4 offers, right? They're trying to navigate millions of dollars potentially as a high school quarterback coming out and going to college. Then you've got the other kid who, in the world of NIL now, it's probably more difficult than it's ever been to get a Division I scholarship as a high school kid coming out, because all these quarterbacks, if they're not playing, a lot of times they're hitting the portal and just kind of getting recycled. Yeah. So I always get parents asking, what can we do? How do we get in front of schools? You know what the schools are looking for. If you're one of those kids who's like trying to go out and get an offer and just get in front of people, in your opinion, like, how do kids go about and do that now? Because it used to just be go hit one-day camps and go shake a coach's hand and do that. But I just feel like the landscape has changed quite a bit now.
It has. I don't know, to answer it specifically, like in terms of getting the offer, I don't know that there's like a science behind that, right? Like obviously people are going to say, right, social media is a component to it, and it is, right? But really what I tell kids is use what you just said, right? The transfer portal and all those sorts of things as your opportunity. So where you start is not where you'll finish necessarily, right? So go to the best opportunity. Let's say that's a Division II school, right? And if you play and you go play lights out, well, then you'll have more opportunity. So if your goal is to be at a high level Division I full scholarship player and maybe even, get some NIL or rev share money on top of that, well, where's your best opportunity going to be to play and show what you can do? You can get the scholarship at a larger school, but if the situation's not set up for you to play early there, well, then there's going to be more people coming in because there's really no development anymore. There's really very little development plan because, like you said, the portal affects that. Everyone wants to win now, which I get. And then, these players come in, and if they don't play in a year or two, they're then looking to transfer, right? So I would look at it the opposite. I would say, well, I don't want to be a part of that cycle. I'd rather go be the guy that goes to a slightly smaller school or an opportunity where I can play as a freshman or sophomore, go ball out, and then either I stay there because I love it and I think it's the best thing for my career, or I'm going to have more opportunities to go in and be like the solidified starter.
That's exactly what I tell kids too. I mean, I look at my own journey, even pre-NIL. So, kids call me Unk now. They think I'm old because I'm pre-NIL and all this. But, I'm at Minnesota. I started my career there. I'm there for 3 years. Okay, I go to transfer. I grad transferred because that was important at the time. You couldn't really go D1 if you didn't graduate, right. So you'd have to go down. So I looked at my situation where I'm leaving Minnesota. I've got several bigger schools, Arizona State, Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, some bigger Division I schools talking to me. And then I've got South Dakota, I've got Western Illinois, got Tennessee Tech. And I ended up going to South Dakota where I was going to get an opportunity to play and get on the field. And maybe it wasn't the most glamorous choice of going to ASU or going to Wisconsin, but I knew I'd have an opportunity to play. And I always share that with kids because look where my career went. I went to the CFL, right. Made the most of that opportunity, come down to the NFL, carve out a 4-year career there, end up playing 8 years professionally. And it's not like I was at Alabama, right? I went to South Dakota, a program that had never even had a winning season prior to me getting there. So
right.
I completely reiterate what you're saying is just go where the opportunity is to get on the field, let your play handle it, and then those opportunities will present themselves down the road.
That's 100% right. And look, these teams, number one, if you want to play in the NFL teams scout all those leagues now, right? The opportunities there. If you want to play at a higher level, these colleges, services like mine and other services, they scout every level, right? Because there is talent everywhere that can play, And look, not everybody's going to win a Grey Cup and wear a fur coat, right? Not everybody's going to have that opportunity, but there's still plenty, to your point, to play early, right? And let your play do the talking for you. Like you're going to make more money, and who knows where that goes. At a minimum, you're going to have an opportunity to play at a higher level and make a little bit more money than any of us did by the time we got out of college,
Yeah. Yeah. And these kids are setting themselves up for success down the road, and all the more need for, you talk about NIL agents and all these people around these kids is like having the right people around them, advising them, because you get a few $100,000 at the age of 18 and you can really set yourself up in a great position. And that's something I'm always trying to get in kids' ears about too, is like, man, make the most of this, because you're 18, 19 years old. You're probably not appreciating as much as you are when you get a little bit older, and you're like, man, that is a heck of a head start you've got.
No doubt.
Yeah. I want to ask you one more question, and then we'll finish up. I appreciate your time. And maybe, I don't know if we can even get into this because of, conflict of interest and stuff, but as you're obviously very dialed in on college football right now, and I'd love to continue talking more college football as the fall comes up. We can get into that conversation another date. But as you're watching tape and you're scouting guys and teams, is there any teams that you see that you're like, this is a team that has a really talented roster, I think some people might be sleeping on them and they could do some good things? Is that a conflict of interest for you to say if there's a team like that you've seen?
A little bit. I will say this, like some of the teams that I'm working with, I don't want to comment on exactly who it is yet until those things are kind of public, but I would love to circle back, because there are 2 teams in my mind right now that I think are going to be much better than people realize, just because I kind of go through their roster, and when I watch them, I go, wow, this guy's a good player here. This is a good player here, and then I look at where teams are projected, and I'm like, I think they're going to be better than that. So there are 2 teams in my mind right now that I feel that way about, and we should definitely, if I'm right, then we'll talk about it. If I'm wrong, then we'll just make it 2 other teams, basically,
We'll bury this clip if it doesn't come to fruition, but if it does, you'll be right, and we'll be standing on the table.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay, that's good. We'll put a pin in that and we'll circle back to that. Hey, here's my final question. And I want to ask you, because I asked this to all my players, and I've only done interviews with players. You're my first guy that's not a player.
Awesome.
So when I retired this past year, I had somebody ask me, when you're done playing football, what do you want your football legacy to be? If you had a football tombstone, what do you want that tombstone to say? And so I want to ask that to you from the other side of it, being in the front office and helping players and helping them on their journey. When you're done with football and you step away from the game and you're retired, what do you want your football legacy to be? What do you want your football tombstone to say?
Wow, that's a good one. Honestly, I would want it to say something about the relationships, like you and I were talking, and you and I have talked about this, like, you just think about our relationship, right? Like, we signed you, cut you, like I was a part, I had all those conversations with you, right? And now we still have this relationship now, right? And those things matter more to me than any game we won or any, other acquisition or idea that I came up with, and it's like, I've got the same relationship with guys, I mentioned some of them on this call, and others that I have a great relationship with. And honestly, when I left the Jets, they were the ones that like reached out and were like, how can I help you? Is there anything I can do to, help you with your next step. And they have in a lot of cases, they really have. And, that matters to me more than anything. Like having those relationships and the ones that have lasted for years after the player's done playing. And now I know after I've left, like having those relationships means more to me than anything. And so I would want it, I don't know the exact phrase, but I would want it to be something about that, about the relationships that you made, and you kind of go to battle with these people every day and you deal with adversity every day, but the relationship maintains through think, and I have this conversation with like other people. I don't know if they want me to mention them, but like I've cut them and we're still great friends to this day. Not many relationships are able to like just overcome something like that. And for me, it means so much for me that it does. So that's really what I want the legacy to be, is just the relationships I have with the people and the ones that last, stand the test of time, really.
Yeah. Well, and that's not just lip service, man. That's one thing I've always really respected about you is some people say relationships and they care about people, but when the rubber meets the road, they disappear. And you're a guy that's always showed up. I always felt like you cared about the guys and invested in having some type of personal relationship with guys. And I think that's why it's easier when, it does end up going in separate directions professionally to keep that relationship moving because you've already established some type of personal connection there, man. So I've always really, really appreciated that about you. And as someone who's been in the same building as you, I can say you have successfully done that.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Look, at the end of the day, we're all on the same team trying to do the same thing, and I believe the best teams are the most connected. And I always tried to, to have that connection with as many people organically as you can, because, where we can help each other is only going to help the team. And then now, where we can help each other in our next endeavor, like it's mutually rewarding for the both of us. So I appreciate you saying that a ton. I mean, look, we got stories for days about the Jets too. I mean, we got so much more we could get into on whenever, but what you just said means, and a lot of laughs, I'm sure, but what you just said means more to me than, whoever I signed or whoever I was a part of and all that sort of stuff. It really does.
Yeah. Well, hey, we will definitely do this again and share some more Jet stories, talk some more college football. I wanted to cover a lot of kind of what you're doing now and give that perspective to people. But man, would love to make this a more regular thing as we get into the fall with college football and NFL. And yeah, we got plenty of stories. We could probably go for an hour and a half here, but we'll keep it short for people.
Easily.
Yeah. Well, Nej, I really appreciate you, man. I'm looking forward to doing this again soon, and I'll talk to you soon, man.
Absolutely. Thanks, bro. I appreciate you, man.